I work full time. I am also currently an art student. I also have freelance projects, illustration projects, and I also desperately want to make time for my own skill development and artistic progression and exploration. And a lot of the time, balancing all of those things feels really difficult, if not like genuinely impossible. But I've been consciously making an effort lately to explore ways to embed creativity back into my routine and to feel like myself again and to feel like I'm actually nurturing that side of myself. And so I thought today I would share what has been working in case any of those tips might be handy for you. I just wanted to start today's class So first, let's identify the problem, because more often than not, the problem isn't actually time. If my screen time says anything, it's not that I don't have time to do the things that I want to do. It's actually that I just don't have the mental energy and I'm exhausted from doing all of that, the other things that I need to do, that stops me from doing the things that I want to do. And then all of the really heavy emotions that come along with that, like the guilt of not creating when I feel like I'm supposed to be, or anger at myself and like not being capable of making stuff even though I've just worked a full work day and I have, planned my next client project or whatever it might be. That just compounds it, and honestly it makes it so much worse. It's really hard to be creative when you're exhausted and when you're making yourself feel horrible for every decision that you make. So truly, I found one of the biggest problems for me is friction. If it takes me 10 minutes to set up and start, I generally don't want to do it, particularly on days when I'm exhausted. I've been working, I have, to walk the dogs and cook dinner and do everything else that, being like a functioning adult requires of you. So if something is going to take a significant amount of setup time, I just won't. On days when you have more free time, obviously, that's when you attempt and try to dig into those bigger projects. But on days when I'm like creatively pressed, my tactic is two things. One is either like dedicated focus art time, and the other one is like micro art moments. And I switch between these depending on the day, whether I've worked, how much creative energy I have, and as long as I can engage in one of these per day, I consider that day a success. So planned like art blocks is setting a timer, let's say an hour for painting on a Saturday afternoon. I will schedule it in, I'll put it in my planner, I will have everything sort of pre-set up if I can, and that time is specifically dedicated to that practice. I'm a really big fan of Pomodoro timers. I think that they really help. They work well for my brain because nothing feels too overwhelming, and I'll try and do 1 or 2 Pomodoros like sessions on a project. That's if I have time, and that's if maybe my work schedule for that day has not been as demanding. When I'm like in the classroom teaching, that is like significantly more draining. As much as I like it, it requires me to be like on all the time, and so those days I struggle a lot more with creating. And on days like that, I use my micro art moments, and these are 5-minute, 10-minute sessions of art that I can like steal time while I'm doing something else. So I will pick something like a medium that's kind of, say, mindless, I suppose, or more relaxing, like sketching or doodling or coloring in. I generally will save all of like the creative heavy lifting, like concepting, for days when I have more energy. And I will also engage in my micro art moment while I'm doing something else. So I might put on a TV show and then sit there sketching on my iPad, or I might watch Twitch streams or YouTube, and then I will sit at my desk and draw in pen in my sketchbook as well. So these micro art moments, they don't have like a huge time attached to them. If I do 10 minutes, I'm considering that a win. For a while, my micro art moment was literally one sketchbook spread, and I don't use large sketchbooks. They're like They're like this big, not particularly large. So one sketchbook spread, and then that is like my art done for the day. And that is one really low pressure way that has helped me feel like I'm still making progress even on the days when I'm exhausted because of other responsibilities. One of the fastest ways to kill my creativity is unrealistic expectations. Pressure is one thing. I think pressure comes with all sorts of client work. Anything you care about comes with a degree of pressure. So pressure is not the problem. It is having expectations that are entirely unfeasible, and I am supremely guilty of this. I used to plan to like paint every day and work on a YouTube video and do my job and go to the gym and cook a fresh meal and take care of my pets. Like it's just not possible, and we need to accept our limitations to a certain extent, because when I would fail, I would get exceptionally discouraged. So now I might set like one larger creative goal per week, like, you know, post 2 new pieces of artwork and share 3 old pieces of artwork. I don't know, but I set much more reasonable goals, and I try to be smart about my work where possible. Making more just for the sake of making more doesn't result in skill development or actually enjoying the process or anything like that. So I want to create work that actually fulfills me, not just create work for the sake of being busy, you know? So small wins add up here, and they make it easier to stay consistent. So set reasonable goals. My next solution is to make it fun again. And this is probably one of my biggest critiques of art school, actually, is that it has really pushed me away from making fun art. And it's really trying to like force me to forget why I started making art in the first place. So lately I've been reminding myself why I started creating in the first place, and the less pressure I put on myself to make something deep and meaningful every single time I put pen to paper, the better my work has started becoming, or the better my work has started feeling. I think objectively, potentially people in the fine art industry would say my work isn't getting better, but I would say I'm enjoying it more, and if I'm enjoying it more, I can continue doing it. And as long as it resonates with some people and makes some people happy, then that's a win for me. So if you're struggling to find time for creativity, maybe it's because it feels like another obligation. So revisit, are you engaging with like the mediums that you want to? Should you do something more pointless or fun, like start basic, buy a coloring book and some markers and color that in, or practice embroidery or beading or clay, sculpting out of clay? Maybe you're taking yourself and your work too seriously, and you're putting far too much pressure on the entire process of creation. Maybe you should just make something silly and something fun or something nonsensical, because that might help reignite the spark as to why you started creating in the first place. Creativity fundamentally is not a competition as much as it might be turned into one by the industry. And so retaining it as something special for you that you do because you enjoy it and because it brings you a sense of like purpose and fulfillment, and it might resonate with others, that is in and of itself a good enough goal, and that's all you have to do. So there we have it. Finding time for creativity isn't just about making more time. Fundamentally, we still all have 24 hours in a day. And if our days are so filled up with obligations that we can't make art, then the only way to make more time is to remove some of those obligations. What I tend to find, and I know is true for me, is that it's not that I don't have enough time. It's that I'm making the process difficult, I'm making the process unenjoyable, and I'm making the process another job, another task, another thing I have to do. If it's a job, then you treat it like a job and you do it whether or not you feel like doing it. But if it's something for fun, then you need to remove those barriers and break down that resistance, so that way you actually want to engage with it. And you can only do that by making it something that is easy to do, that is flexible enough to fit into your different days, and that is playful and like whimsical. I find that one of the biggest times I struggle with creating is after a long break of not creating. I get into these like weird funks, which I used to be so good at not falling into. When I was freelancing, I would make art almost every single day, and I would just share it and it wasn't always the best, but it was always pushing me forward. And if I look at that period of my life, the art I was creating at the beginning and the art I was creating at the end, like there was significant improvement in what I was making, even though it wasn't like I wasn't forcing it, I was just making stuff. And I find that now that I'm working, it becomes easier for there to be periods of months where I make nothing. And getting out of those periods is so much more challenging than making art every day. So that really suggests to me that so much of it is playing like mind games with myself and trying to make my experience something that I'm really excited to do and that I am not feeling this huge level of resistance for. So I'm curious, if you're struggling with this, how do you make time for creativity? Do you think it's a genuine time issue, or do you think it is more of a mental block resistance sort of issue? And if it is mental blocking and resistance, do you think that any of these techniques or tactics could potentially help? Let me know in the comments, because I'm really keen to talk about this. I think this is an exceptionally common experience and I would like to not feel so alone. So yeah, drop me a comment. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.